So I am Erin Robinson. I'm the Executive Director of ESIP, and I'm joined by my whole team. So Megan Carter is our Community Director, and you'll hear from her shortly. Annie Burgess is on the call. She's our Lab Director. And I'm not screen sharing yet. And Dan Keys is he's listed in the chat as our staff plenary co-host. So these are our key ESIP staff people that you will see around the meeting and are here to help you throughout the next 2 weeks and also throughout your entire time that you're participating in ESIP, both during the meeting and after. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. We'll just get rolling. Oops, I always do this. I share when I want to present and I present when I want to share. So I think this is ESIP 101. Normally we give this in person at the summer meeting. We try to fit it in kind of early on, and so being virtual is actually really nice because we're able to give this ahead of time and give you a little bit of time to digest it. So this is really a general overview of what the Earth Science Information Partners is and what we do both at the meetings and really the focus here is beyond the meetings. So the vision for ESIP is as a community to be a leader in the collection, stewardship, use, and reuse of earth science data, information, and knowledge, and in a way that's responsive to societal needs. And we have these core values of being agile and collaborative, open and participatory and voluntary. And really ESIP has 20 years of being this open community where people are learning from each other, they're coming together, and it's a non-competitive space. So it's a pre-competitive space where people are coming together, they're solving common challenges, and they're going back to their home institutions and they're actually implementing those challenges. And so a lot of our work is done in the virtual space between our meetings, and then normally we do have 2 in-person meetings that we have refactored into virtual meetings, and you'll hear a bit more about that later. But I want to emphasize these core values because I think that that's an essence of knowing that there's a generosity in this community and that there is a spirit of wanting to work together and push the envelope, particularly around data management and data stewardship. So that leads to the shared agenda. ESIP as a community of partners cannot force you to do anything. And so we've created this shared agenda that we've been focused on for the last 5 years as a way to orient the community around a variety of topics. And we've then taken each of these themes year by year. And we've had webinars and we focused our meeting plenaries on these themes, and our collaboration areas have all kind of oriented around them in a loose way. But again, there's not deliverables. It's really, these have just been some general kind of conversation topics, but at a higher level. So we use that as one way to pull together what can feel like a very distributed community that's doing lots of different stuff. This is one way that we organize around those themes. So that brings us to the community. So I think ESIP can be thought of as a brain trust of the earth science data professionals. But it brings people together across the data lifecycle. So from data archives to application developers to tool developers to research data product developers. It also brings people together across multiple science domains because we know that these challenges that people face around data and data management are not unique to a single domain, and there's actually a lot of common threads here. And then it brings people together across sector as well. And one emphasis I want to point out here is that it brings people together across agencies. So ESIP has been supported by NASA, NOAA, and USGS through 3 cooperative agreements for the life of our organization, which is just over 20 years old. And we see a lot of cross-agency collaboration happening, which has really been very fruitful and useful. So this picture should let you know that there's a place for all of you, and there's and people are coming together around these common challenges. So just to give you a sense of our members, so I mentioned the data archives and distributors. So all of the NASA DACs, NOAA and CEI, and then NSF funded repositories like UNAVCO and BCODEMO. We have a research type 2 product and service provider. So you might be familiar with some of these partners. And then type 3 are more of our application developers. So Esri is one, Kitware is another. And then I mentioned our sponsors. And then these type 5 members are collaborative data networks. And so ESIP has partnerships with groups like EarthCube, which is a consortium of NSF-funded Earth science data projects, or the Open Geospatial Consortium, which develops geospatial standards. And so there's a lot of, ESIP is not a standards body, but our members are implementing standards. And so we have a lot of nice back and forth with those sorts of organizations. So ESIP, in addition to the staff that I mentioned, is run by a set of elected leaders. We have our board members, which are the yellow and green. So our president and vice president, as well as our administrative committees and our 3 at-large board members. And then we have our program committee, which includes the administrative committees, the president and vice president, and then 4 thematic or technical committees. And you can really think of ESIP, in addition to the shared agenda, another way to think of ESIP activities is really how they kind of cluster around these topics of data stewardship, education, and particularly how we get earth science data to the classroom, information technology and interoperability. And then most recently, we've added semantic technology, and we have a strong community of semantic experts, as well as data stewardship experts and general other data professionals. So this is the sort of the key set of folks who are really responsible for stewarding the vision and strategy for ESIP as an organization. We also have a set of community fellows who you'll meet throughout the meeting. And these are graduate students and recent postdocs who are paired with a particular ESIP activity. And they are bringing their research expertise to that committee. And it's a great way for these early career folks to start to network with peers that are further along in their careers. And so we are really grateful to have such an incredible set of community fellows. So one of the things that we feel like is important is adding community engagement and management as part of the things that these graduate students and postdocs are learning. And so we are bringing them along in that space, but they also contribute so much to our community. And one of the sessions that I would point you to is the What We Wish We Had Learned in Graduate School session that's happening in the second week, where they're thinking about mapping the data management lifecycle to the dissertation timeline. And I think that's going to be a really cool session. So they're contributing a lot, but I would encourage you to introduce yourself and to reach out to them, because really I think the key value for them is they're making these connections, and they make a lot of those at the in-person meetings. And we're thinking about how to refactor that for the virtual meeting. So together, that really brings us to the interoperability stack. So ESIP does all of these things at a human level. So we really spend our time focusing here in the this collaborative, this kind of upper level. We connect humans, we connect organizations. Those people and organizations make decisions, and then they go back down the interoperability stack and they actually implement these at their home institutions. So we don't provide data. ESIP doesn't provide data. We don't sustain cyber infrastructure. We don't compete with our members, and we don't develop standards. So escape. Okay, I'm in the right place. I just had this fear with nobody talking, and 2, just presenting to you that I might be presenting the wrong deck, but I'm not. So we provide this communication and this collaborative infrastructure through a variety of tools, which you are being acquainted to at the summer meeting. So for the summer meeting, we're primarily focused on the Schedule agenda tool, Kiko Chat, Zoom, But this just gives you a sense of the kind of breadth of tools that we offer to our community for free. And we also, so this is the way that we try to lower the bar and lower the barrier to collaboration. So we think of this like a backbone infrastructure, where we provide the jungle gym, and what you all do on top of it is the community-led and community-driven aspects of ESIP. And so we've added these tools. This looks like a lot, but we've added these tools over time as the community has asked for these resources. And then that leads me to the other part of the ESIP backbone, which is the staff team. And so I mentioned Dan, Annie, and Megan. In addition, probably most of you know that I am the outgoing executive director. So I've been ESIP's executive director for the last 6 years, and felt like when I renewed my contract, it was time to move on. And so our board led a search, and we're really very, very excited to welcome Susan Shingledecker in as our incoming executive director. She actually starts on July 13th, and she and I will overlap for until the end of September when my term ends. So in addition to my fantastic team, we're really super excited to have Susan coming in. And with that, we are going to cover the 3 approaches that we take. So I'm going to hand off to Megan Carter to talk about our virtual collaborations. And then we'll hear from Annie about the lab, and then I'll wrap it up with a little bit more about the meetings.
Thank you, Erin.
Megan, take it away.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Megan Carter, and I'm ESIP's Community Director. And I will be telling you a little bit about ESIP's collaboration areas. ESIP supports collaboration through its approximately 30 themed collaboration areas, and these are groups of people that convene virtually regularly, typically monthly, around earth science data challenges and opportunities. And you can see the wide range in topics, the large number of them. It's a very active and exciting set of groups to work with. So next slide, please. These groups, they meet virtually throughout the year, and they often host sessions at the ESIP in-person or virtual meetings, and they're open and free to join. So there's no RSVP necessary. You can simply view the ESIP telecon calendar and hop on any call that you find interesting. And once you do, I recommend that you speak up and share what challenges or opportunities you're working on in your day job, because we want people to want to come back, to find these to be productive environments, and that requires that you share, what your challenges are and what would keep you coming back. So if we move on to the next slide, as I mentioned, many of the collaboration areas, and actually I looked at the list this morning, and nearly all of them will host breakout sessions at the upcoming meeting. So this is just a few examples. The Envirosensing Cluster is going to lead a session on recent advances in environmental sensing for monitoring and research. The Community Data Cluster is aiming to bring ESIP's expertise to underserved communities, so they will host a do-a-thon specifically aimed at identifying sources of water quality data for areas of Southeast Michigan, including Flint. The Ag and Climate Cluster recognizes that socio-environmental challenges, such as those related to climate adaptation and disaster mitigation, as well as disaster response, are transdisciplinary problems that can make it very difficult for a team to have a common understanding and begin to approach a challenge. So they will host a session on how concept maps can help with this. The Discovery Cluster is exploring usage-based discovery, and they will have a 3-part hack fest that you're welcome to join. And this group would like to enable users to find earth science data based on how they plan to use it. So think about being able to say, I want to predict landslides, which data sets will help me do that? Finally, of the groups that I will highlight, the Disaster Lifecycle Cluster invites data producers, providers, and users to a session about defining trusted data and operationally ready data, particularly in this era of COVID-19. So I have to say it one more time, I've highlighted just a very small fraction of the ESIP groups that will be present for the meeting, and I'm excited for you all to jump in and get to know them and to see how topically diverse and very active they are. And moving to the next slide. I also wanted to mention that because there's so much going on in all of these collaboration areas, it can be hard to keep track of what's going on in which places. So we have this annual event that's aimed at broadening awareness of the activities, increasing communication and collaboration between them, and inviting new participants to join in. This is the Collaboration Area Highlights webinar, which we typically host in the spring. And it has a number of very fast-paced overviews of what the groups are working on. It's a great place to hop in if you want to learn a lot quickly and figure out where you might plug in. So with that, I will pass it off to Annie Burgess, ESIP's Lab Director.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet all of you who I haven't met before. Again, my name is Annie Burgess. I'm the Lab Director at ESIP. And the ESIP Lab is, it's probably the newest, well, it's the newest like branch within ESIP. We conceptualized it a few years ago now, and it's really the place within ESIP that we are able to do a lot of experimentation with actual technology development. So you heard Aaron say, we don't provide data, we don't sustain infrastructure, but we do want to empower our members to experiment and to prototype technology development in a collaborative and really be explicit that learning is okay within these projects. So as you see kind of in this triangle, we do this through a couple mechanisms. So we put out 2 requests for proposals a year, and within those proposals, we provide funding. We let people frame some objectives that they're going to get at the end of that proposal process, and we say experimentation is okay, and that the return on investment that ESIP hopes to get is that we are training a cohort of scientists that are now more savvy and technically adept at using and creating infrastructure for the earth sciences. So next slide. So again, we do this through a twice annual request for proposals within that RFP of a maximum budget of about $10,000, and that doesn't include cloud computing resources. So if you want to use cloud computing resources, we have additional budget for that. The proposals, similar to a normal proposal review process, are reviewed by peers and experts in that field. And again, we encourage reuse of other kind of a reuse is okay, that all that what you are proposing doesn't have to be 100% novel. And then project selection is focused on collaboration. The science has to be sound, but if it is slightly more experimental in the technology side, that is okay. So if you think like the physics has to be sound, but is this gonna work on the technical side? That's where we like to stretch and see innovation, as long as you have a really great, a collaborative team and a good vision. Next slide. And so where we see this coming together is, again, that we like to see these projects result in skill development, community engagement, and if you come out of the back end with your technical objectives being met for your own project, then we see that as being impactful. So with that, again, check out esiped.org/lab, and I will excitedly see you all at the meeting. So Aaron?
Cool. Thanks so much, Annie.
Mm-hmm.
And I would encourage you to check out the esiped.org lab. Maybe Annie put that in the chat for everybody too. There's a great video that Annie did with a little more about the lab, and you can see some of the funded projects recently. Annie's done a great job with that website. So with that, that brings us to the third aspect of how we connect. So we connect virtually through the collaboration areas that Megan described. When people have a technical topic that they're really interested in exploring, or an idea that they'd like to see if it'll work, they take it to the lab. And then both of those activities come back together at our meetings. And this is just, so ESIP meetings are not normally traditional meetings of sit and have final results presented to you in a pretty passive way. What makes ESIP meetings different? We have a few plenary sessions, but most of our content is actually created and contributed by all of you, by our session attendees, by our meeting attendees, by our clusters and collaboration areas, by our lab projects. So most of the time is spent in breakouts, which I've started calling ESIP sessions, because breakouts is being used. There are Zoom breakouts and breakouts, but ESIP breakouts are the community contributed content. And then a lot of the time is spent in networking time. So what we hear time and again from our post-meeting feedback survey is that the connections that people are making at ESIP meetings are really fruitful for future projects, for future funding, for new work, and for existing work. So we spend a lot of time in the networking spaces and try to make those really productive for our attendees. And then we normally have an unconference time where ideas that have emerged through the first several days of the meeting can then be further discussed. And then what's been kind of new recently at ESIP meetings has been co-located events. So even at this virtual meeting, there are a couple of co-located events that are happening on the first Monday. So groups that know that ESIP is bringing together this brain trust of data professionals and those that are interested in working with earth science data, other groups are now tacking on additional events to take advantage of that collection of people who are coming together. So as I think all of you know, we're moving to a virtual meeting, and most of our meeting is being run, or the home base of our meeting is run through Kiko Chat. And if you're interested in that, and some of you have already come to the Kiko Chat Quick Start, but this allows us to have these events, which basically mimic the plenary and breakout room concept. And so every morning we will be in the plenary space, and then in the afternoons, you'll be able to hop down to the particular Kiko Chat room for your ESIP session that you want to attend, and you'll just click the join video for the plenary or for the room that you want to attend. So it gives you that kind of agency to move around in the virtual space that you would have in the in-person space, where you might come to the plenary or you might be in the hallway having a conversation. We have opportunities for both of those things. The other thing that makes ESIP different, and I mentioned this informal networking piece, is the way that we do that in two specific ways. We do that through the Research Showcase, and we also do that through Funding Friday. And so the Research Showcase is like a poster session, but with a more creative spin on sharing your work. And then Funding Friday, just like Annie was describing the lab and the way that the incubator projects work in the lab, Funding Friday is really a mini grant competition that is run by Annie through the lab, that is to support the crazy or emergent ideas that are coming up at the meeting that you might, have an idea that's sparked by talking to some colleagues. And the Funding Friday mini grant competition is a way to make that come to life. So we award 3 $5,000 prizes and 3 $3,000 prizes to teachers and students. And so to give you just a sense of how that's showing up in this virtual space, there is the Research Showcase in the Kiko Chat. So at any time you can browse the posters or the presentations that are being shared. This table of contents tab will show you all of the things that are in the Research Showcase, and then you can navigate down to the particular presentation that you're looking for. And then each of those presentations has a Google Docs notes page associated with it for asynchronous comments and capture of things if the presenter doesn't happen to be there. Funding Friday also has a space available to generate ideas and to conceive of these things. And so there's normally the posters are hand drawn, and so we have some ability to do some virtual drawing. Annie, I wonder if you want to say anything else about the Funding Friday space.
Sure.
Here. Maybe a little bit about the collaboration stations spaces.
Yeah, so one thing, and I'm not sure if we're going to mention First Friday at this event, but we have Funding Friday set up. Normally when we're in person, the attendees that normally come to ESIP meetings kind of know about Funding Friday from the get-go. And so in the summer, they can start brainstorming on the Tuesday when we start the meeting about their Funding Friday ideas, and they're chatting the whole time. So within the Funding Friday Kiko Chat space, we do have a place that if you want to add an idea, but you would also like to find collaborators or talk to people about that, you can see one tab that says add your idea, find collaborators, or get feedback. So you can post an idea there, you can add some contact information for yourself, and you could say, I'm just looking for feedback, or I'm looking for collaborators for that. And then we also, during a networking event we'll have on the first Friday of the meeting, we'll have some time where we have a number of breakout rooms where what we're hoping is that people that have shared ideas can have an intentional space to go and start working through the concept for their Funding Friday project. So it's kind of asynchronous and synchronous ways to collaborate. So we hope that people will add content to that space throughout the meeting for ideas. And then we do have some time, intentional time, when we're all going to be together, that people will be able to work through their ideas and start working on their posters. So I encourage you to go check this space out. And again, be in contact or leave a comment if you have any other questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Yanni.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have time for questions at the end if you have specific questions about this. But so then the third sort of part of Kiko Chat that we really like is this member directory. And actually this, we will just go straight to our the current live space, because my screenshot looks pretty sad. Since we made these slides, we now have 199 members, and so there's the ability to browse people by their spatial location. So this is the first time we've really been able to see the ESIP community and where they're spatially distributed. You can browse their profiles. You can, there's an emerging network map. So I would encourage you, as you're preparing for the meeting, to fill out your profile, add a picture, and your little picture will follow you around in the Kiko Chat space. And so in the profile, it also has a place for skills. And so we're seeing this pretty cool network map emerging of how our members are linked to each other through their skills. And then what we know about the virtual meeting space is that we need to be more literal. So in all of these places, like in the research showcase where there's the page for notes, like in the Funding Friday spaces where there's a place to drop an idea and ask for collaborators, your profile also has some extra spaces to offer things that you're glad to offer or share, and things that problems that you're looking to get help on. And then the connection with these folks is pretty easy. You can send an email, you can follow, but you can write an email directly from this, and it'll go to the email address that's on file for this particular attendee. So that's a way that we're imagining and reimagining the summer meeting. All of this is hopefully to, I'm gonna try to head back to presentation mode, to head back to really cultivating the community and helping people find their earth science data people, to find people who are a sounding board for ideas, to get your questions answered. And really it's, I think, the kind of the physical manifestation of the professional home for earth science data professionals and for data people. So we are hoping that in all of the things that we've done to rework the summer meeting into a virtual meeting, that what the community says about our meetings will still be true. And so we will be looking for a lot of feedback from all of you, and hoping that if something's not working, or something could be better, or something's not clear, that you will give us that feedback too. So I think at this point, I will turn it back over to Megan.
Okay, so we have just a few slides left. Thank you for staying with us. I wanted to tell you guys about the ESIP Meeting Highlights webinar, which is actually a post-meeting event to be held on Thursday, August 13th at 3 p.m. Eastern. This is a really fun, fast-paced way to hear about sessions that you may have missed during the meeting. And you can hear what happened and how to get involved in next steps. So while you're building your agenda for the next couple of weeks, don't panic if there are certain things that overlap. This is a great place to come and learn a lot quickly about what happened. Next, I'd like to tell you about one other event that ESIP regularly organizes, which is the Data Help Desk. And this is an opportunity that provides researchers with a way to engage with informatics experts that are familiar with their scientific domain. And it's a way for them to learn skills and techniques that will hopefully help them with their research and help them to make their data and software more fair. As you can see from the pictures here, in the past, these were physical events that happened at exhibit booths at scientific meetings, so AGU, GSA, Ocean Sciences meeting. But we've also successfully hosted a virtual data help desk in conjunction with the EGU General Assembly in May, and we're laying the groundwork for doing so at GSA and AGU this coming fall. We've hosted them largely on Twitter, the virtual ones, and we are really excited to do this again. So if you have expertise you'd like to share as part of a future event or an idea that could potentially even improve this event, we'd be happy to hear from you. So please reach out to me on that. Next, I would like to say that the next slide, that there are a number of ways you can get involved in ESIP. You've heard of many of them today. And so you can join an ESIP collaboration area. You can apply for the small grant funding through the ESIP Lab that Annie mentioned. You can encourage your organization to become an ESIP partner. We want to encourage you all to engage in any and all of the ways that are productive for you. So if you have questions about where you might plug in, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you about what your interests and needs are. And with the last slide, I'd like to say, if you take just one action today, if you're new to ESIP, I would recommend that you sign up for our Monday update mailing list. This is the link on the bottom left here. It's a way to get a once weekly update on all things happening in and around ESIP. We don't send a lot of messages, but you can get a lot in one weekly message. So with that, I'd like to say thank you to everyone for attending today. We hope you learned a lot, and we're happy to answer any questions.